please. Andrew Zeal.
Does the Royal Marine recently convicted of murder deserve any form of leniency?
This is the Royal Marine who was found guilty of murder in Afghanistan, and some military voices have been raised saying that he should be treated leniently. Nikki King, what's your take on that?
No. Originally, before I actually read the report of the case, I talked a lot about the heat of battle and, you know, soldiers are soldiers, but when you actually look at the evidence, it was cold-blooded murder, full stop. And so I don't think there's any question about it that he should be held accountable.
Nigel Lawson?
Nikki's absolutely right. I don't think I've got anything to add. She is absolutely right, and I think this is accepted by the Royal Marines themselves.
Julian Thompson, who, as you know, served in the Falklands, said that he wasn't going to stand around bad-mouthing him. I don't condemn him. He's like a member of the family who broke the law.
Yeah, but there have been other Royal Marines who've taken a very...
What do you think of the Daily Telegraph's petition to have the judge show leniency?
Well, it might well be a good journalistic stunt, but it doesn't alter my view, which is exactly the same as Nikki's.
That murder is murder. Paul Kenny.
This particular, and this, you know, there weren't circumstances really to change that verdict. It was very, very thoroughly done. It was a proper procedure, and I'm afraid there weren't any mitigating circumstances.
The man in the pink shirt there.
Then we need to look at what separates the Royal Marines from the Taliban, and one of the major differences between one and the other is that the Royal Marines works in the parameters of the law, and the Taliban does not. What the Royal Marine in question did with one shot from his pistol is blur the lines between what is right and what the Royal Marines do 9 times or even more out of 10, and what the Taliban do on a daily basis.
If it was your son that was at the end of that bullet, how would you feel about that situation? Murder is murder, and there's no justification for it.
Okay. Does anybody disagree with what the general tenor of views so far? You do, sir, up there. Yes.
I'll just turn that question round. What if it was your son who'd been out in Afghanistan for 6 months, under the hell that they went through out there, seeing their comrades' arms and legs hanging from trees? We don't know the stress that they were under, and I think to condemn him is awful. I can't condone it either, but we don't know what the stress he was under, and he was sent out there in our name.
I'd agree with that if you hadn't read the dialogue that was actually recorded at the time.
Paul Kenny.
Well, there is that point about the question about the incredible stress that we put our armed forces under in the most difficult scenarios that you can imagine. But let's be clear about it, you know, you have to have that standard. I mean, how do we hold up a moral line effectively if what we do is to execute injured prisoners? And if that was, the boot was on the other foot, we rightly would be condemning whoever did that to our personnel. So irrespective of what the opposition is, you don't execute people like that in cold-blooded terms. You just don't do it.
Stella, Creasy.
I think the gentleman who asked the question got it absolutely right. One of the reasons that we ask people to... I mean, we've just had Remembrance Sunday, a hugely, hugely important day for the families of those people who go to serve, because we ask them to make the ultimate sacrifice in serving potential. And one of the reasons that we do that is to uphold those values and to uphold those freedoms. So actually we must be consistent about that. And my worry about this case is the potential that it has to stain the good name of so many people. I speak as somebody who has friends and family who serve, and I'm a proud president of the Royal British Legion in my local community. I feel very passionately the importance of defending the good name of those who we go and ask to serve overseas. And so part of the way that we do that is also when those people do transgress in this way, is to say that is not acceptable. It is not any different. You're absolutely right, sir. Murder is murder.
OK. Thank you very much. Let's go on to another question. Simon Frost. Oh, Ed, I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm going to agree with everyone else, but I do want to make the point. I think it follows on from what Stella was saying. The Royal Marines have an incredibly proud history They have done this country some magnificent achievements, and I think one of the reasons why we have to see this legal process through, allow the evidence to be judged and the sentencing to go through, is because of that proud history of the Royal Marines. Because we do not want the reputation of the Royal Marines besmirched, and getting justice done and seen to be done is the best way to uphold that proud tradition of the Royal Marines.
All right, I'll take a couple of points. The man there with spectacles.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously with this individual case, then it is right that justice is done. But if we're talking about murder is murder, what about the civilians that we killed when we bombed Baghdad and Libya?
OK. And you, sir?
I'd like to know what the panel think that if this is murder, and I believe it is murder, what do they think about the drone operators that kill hundreds of people every day?
The point he was making, and the civilians who are killed. Does anybody want to come on that?
I think on the drones, I think there's a serious question that we've got to face up to. Because I think if the Americans keep using drones in the way they've been doing, I think everyone's going to say this is setting a very, very dangerous precedent. And I think the UN and I think the international community has got to look very seriously at these weapons, that they are potentially, well, they are transgressing sovereignty, and in the case that we know about America, the sovereignty of Pakistan. And while their drones can be, if they're not being used in a military way, they can be used for surveillance in a very effective way, and that's how the British use them. I think there are some real serious issues on the international law of the use of drones, and the American government is beginning to look at that, but I think it needs to be taken more seriously than it's done.
The point is, how do you compare this one Marine killing the injured member of the Taliban, I must assume, with what we know are hundreds of killings of women and children in Afghanistan by drones, in Pakistan by drones, and we just say, well, we ought to look at that?
Well, there are lots of rules, quite rightly, strict rules on international engagement and conflict. And my concern with drones is that the international law hasn't caught up with them, and it must do, so that people who are using these types of technology actually have to abide by the law. The Royal Marines do. When the Royal Marines are in...
What do you mean by abide by the law if you're firing a drone from...
Because the law isn't being applied to those. That's my point I'm making. The law hasn't caught up with the technology, and I'm calling for it to do that.
But until the law catches up, you can use them with impunity, you mean?
Well, no, we shouldn't.
You're saying the Americans do?
And we don't. Well, I don't know enough about how the Americans use them. What I'm saying is, a lot of Americans are saying this, but the Americans in their armed forces are saying, we have got to make sure that we don't set a precedent so other countries start doing what we're doing with drones, because that would be very dangerous.
Paul Kenny.
Well, I mean, I think the killing of innocent civilians is wrong, and if it's wrong universally, and we should have the courage to say that. And I don't find that a difficult problem. Can I just say, I think, Ed, the difficulty here is the drones are getting away from us, because now the Americans are working on robo-drones. They don't even have people at the end of these TV screens guiding the things. These things are pre-planned when they take off, and their basic mission is pre-planned. It's to kill people. So they don't even have the probability of aborting the thing if they look and they see there's lots of civilians there instead of the supposed target.
OK, let's